Hello and welcome back to my studio. I'm Gina, and in today's video I'm going to be kicking off a brand new project. It's one that I've had in the back of my mind for a little bit now, and it's actually to create a book nook. So this one is all around a French bakery and a street scene, and the figurines that I painted up in the last video will be playing quite a big part into this project. But more of that once we kind of get to the end, because they'll be definitely the finishing touches to the project. So in this video I'm actually tackling some things that I've tried before. So with the Doors of Paris, with trying to create some stone out of foam board, all those little things that I've tried already, I'm actually going to put those into practice into this video as well. So hopefully you enjoy, and let's get started. So to begin, I started drawing out on a piece of paper all the size of the buildings and where I wanted all the doors and windows, and then I tacked that to some foam board with the paper removed from one side, and once everything was cut out, the exposed foam allowed me to mark with a pencil and this needle pointy tool thing all the brickwork on the exterior. And then once that was all done, and making sure that I went around where the windows are, I used a scrunched up ball of tinfoil to mark out some extra stonework. I then started adding some details to bulk out the foundations and windowsills before I actually stopped. I realised that I didn't want to get too far ahead of the project before I started the painting. So I started with a light base coat, and then stippled over some layers of colours, which I've used before, although I didn't put in the red. So I've just used this yellow as well as some brown, before going over the entire thing again with a lighter tone to the base coat. And so this just actually adds with the different layers, and then it just helps bring through some more of the texture of what may look like stone. And then I ended up with a final, just a really light coat of white before moving on to just painting out the bottom of one of the buildings with black. This is actually going to be the bakery side of the building. For the windows, I use a mix of matte board, balsa wood and matchsticks, and follow pretty much the same process for all of the windows. The matte board I use for the window reveal or the surround. The balsa wood I use for the window frames. The matchsticks for the mullions, and you'll see a little later I complete the windows with some transoms or the horizontal pieces to make some smaller window panes. The difference with this window is I'm building out the reveals or the surrounds to create the dormer windows. For the roof, because I've already created part of the supports around the windows, this was a pretty simple structure to put together. I painted it with a mixture of black paint and Mod Podge just to give it a nice seal and a little bit of a sheen, and I did this before gluing it in place so that I didn't get any black paint on the white reveals or surrounds. Using my Cricut and some cardstock, I created this decorative balustrade for the dormer. How cute is that? For the bakery windows, I wanted to add in some extra details, so I printed some pictures of the inside of a bakery and glued those to the windows. I know it's cheating, but come on, it looks pretty awesome. Moving on to the bakery sign, I've used some cardboard from the back of a sketch pad so it's nice and thick, and this allows me to layer it up to give some more detail. After gluing the sign in place, I went over the whole thing with a coat of gloss Mod Podge to give it a nice sheen. The window box I've created out of matte board and colour matched to a terracotta pot, then dry brushed on white to bring out the details of the decorative piece on the front, which is actually made from hot glue. The foliage I had left over from another project, which fits in perfectly. Moving on to the other building, I've used the same process for these balustrades using my Cricut and some cardstock. The rest of the handrail and balustrade supports are made from balsa wood, and I've just painted those up in white. For each of the balustrades, I actually wanted these to be all different, and for this particular pattern I knew the look that I was wanting to create, but I wasn't too sure if that actually would be a little bit too big. But actually in the end I'm really happy with this particular pattern. I think it actually helps bring the whole story together. So once the balustrade is all dry, I can bring the whole thing together. The floor of the balcony is also made of balsa wood, and I've kept it pretty simple by also painting that white. There are two sets of doors in this building, and for both of them I actually start off with a base of mat board. For the lower door I'm using some cardstock to add in the details, and while this looks quite cool in black and white, I'm actually painting it out in blue. For the upper door, I'm cutting out the top section to include a couple of windows, and I do this by cutting small strips of mat board, as matchsticks in this particular situation would have been too thick. Also, while this is actually two doors, I've created it as one piece, while the bottom door I'm actually created that into two, because I'm intending to leave one door slightly open. To secure the door in place, I'm just using a couple of strips of balsa wood. These are the same ones that I use for the window frames. For this roof, I'm going to create a series of boxes that angle and slope to create the roof line. And I'm going to use this by adding these little supports at either end, and then also including some in the middle for this particular long piece. To add in some extra details, I'm using the same cardstock around the edges as well as along the face to give the impression that this roof is made up of metal panels. So once that's done, I can glue the boxes together to create the roof line that has made allowances for the upper windows of the building. Hopefully it'll make more sense once we get them all together. Once it's painted black, I'm going to go over the whole thing with a metallic paint to give it that real metal look. To break up the exterior of the building between the first and the second floor, I'm creating some moulding details which will also help frame the doorway. This is the same process I've used on previous projects where I lay a mat board together and glue at right angles and then add in a 3mm dowel. Cutting these at a 45-degree angle to fit around a piece of foam board, and it's done. It's such a simple way to break up such a flat exterior. I've created these little corbels to add more detail, and with the balcony in place it's time for a bit of weathering. I've used a bit of flocking in places where moss would naturally form and just kind of done that across both sides of the project. So that's it. That is so many details in those two buildings. I can't believe how long this has actually taken, but please stick around for part 2. Hit that subscribe button and bell notification so you'll get notified when I upload the next video. And I've also added a couple more videos that I think you might like as well. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video just as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you, and I will see you in the next one.